I'm Dan Graboy, and this is Life in Time of Pandemic. Today I'm talking with Bassam Shakhashiri from the Chemistry Department of UW-Madison. Hi, Bassam.
Hello, Dan. I'm pleased to be with you.
It's nice to talk to you. First of all, is everybody healthy? You, your family?
Yes, my immediate family is in Chicago, where my granddaughter is, 2.5 years old, and I'm here in Madison with my little dog, and everyone seems to be doing okay.
Good.
How about you and your family?
We're healthy, and we're finding ways to enjoy our isolation, and the beautiful summer weather does not hurt, I can tell you that.
Nice.
So you're a chemist, and those of us who aren't chemists imagine you in a white lab coat transferring chemicals from one test tube to another. Is that, in fact, the kind of thing that you do?
This is what I do. This is my philosophy. Science is fun. Yes, we do experiments in the laboratory. Of course, chemistry is an experimental science, and we like to share the joy of science with people everywhere. Not only people who are interested in science, but people who appreciate science and people who can benefit from science. Everyone can benefit from science. So, yes, we do experiments, but for the past 3.5 months, no one has been in the lab. The chemistry department is closed. There are plans for reopening parts of it, especially for the graduate students and the postdoctoral fellows who need to finish their research so they can move on with their careers. So the pandemic has affected everyone in lots of ways, and I'm very glad and very pleased that we're being cautious in our social interactions. In fact, every time I go outside with my dog to have a little walk, this is what I do. And everyone should do that. It is a signal to others that we should be careful and respectful and especially protective of others so that we don't contribute unwittingly to the spread of the virus. It's very, very important to stay vigilant in this regard, Dan, because so much is really unknown about this virus. We're beginning to get some information, but there's a great deal of uncertainty in society, and everyone is suffering from being cooped in, and then we all want to go out. But we should be really, really cautious and careful and follow the public health guidelines. That is really critical. It's also critical that we have our economy functioning in ways that are helpful to us, in ways that are conducive to the well-being, to the thriving society that we live in. But again, there's so much unknown about COVID-19, and that's why we have to be extra, extra vigilant.
What does it mean to look at the world from a scientific point of view?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure how to respond to that. I mean, I could ask you, what does it mean to look at the world from a music point of view? Science is a human endeavor, just like music is, and other arts, and the whole slew of humanities. So science is a way of looking at the world. Science is a way to try to understand and appreciate the beautiful, complex world that we live in. Scientific explorations and scientific discoveries can lead to improvement in society. Some can also lead to other things. And that's why we have to be very careful in what we do with the discoveries that we make. So science can be enriching, can open avenues for us to think about that we may not have thought about before. can help us appreciate the beauty of transformations when different chemicals are mixed together and produce new chemicals. Science can help us learn more about the benefits of discoveries and the adaptation of technological developments to improve the human condition. And that's a very important dimension that I feel very strongly about in terms of the linkage between science and society. Science happens all the time. Then you walk outside at night, you look up in the sky and you see stars. You walk out during the day and you see plants and trees. Um, so the different parts of science, different disciplines, I should say, in science, and the word discipline is important here because there are ways of looking at nature, there are ways of learning more about nature. There are ways that we as human beings must deal with when we encounter something that we don't really understand. We have to learn how to deal with our frustrations. We have to learn to be patient, to be vigilant. In science, we try to learn how to ask questions. Now, everyone should ask questions. There's no question about that. Everyone can ask questions because this is how we learn. But in science, we learn how to formulate the question so that we have a fighting chance of getting a reasonable explanation or a reasonable answer.
So let's focus in for a little bit on COVID-19 pandemic, since this is a historical moment and we're living through this and it's awful. And we're trying to document it in as many ways as possible. So the advice from government officials has changed over the few months that we've been under lockdown. Our understanding of the nature of this virus has changed. Is this evidence of some kind of unscientific thinking, or is this evidence of scientific thinking?
Neither. This is a telltale of the nature of human interactions. I go by what the scientific leaders, people who are doing research, people who are in the know about COVID-19 are saying. And most of what they're saying is, and they have said, we need to flatten the curve. We're doing a fairly decent job in that regard. But there may be other factors that will again trigger a rebound, or not a rebound, but another wave of infection. So to me, what is really important is that we maintain our physical distance, because transmission happens between people, among people, when they're close to each other. More research now is coming out about aerosols and how the virus is transmitted. Basically, everyone knows that, and all the political and government guidelines say that being 6 feet apart is a good thing. So yes, that's not a number pulled out of the air. That's a number based on scientific research, and it may change. It may change. It may change that we may have to be at a distance longer than that. But for the time being, that seems to be working and reducing, helping mitigating transmission. So science gives us knowledge that we choose to use. And I wish everyone in society would choose to use the scientific knowledge to help not only protect themselves, but to protect others. Because you can be asymptomatic and you can be carrying the virus without really knowing it. And you can infect other people. So I am much more aligning myself with being an advocate for following public health official advice. And I realize that sometimes the public health officials change their mind every now and then. That's the nature of research. That's the nature of inquiry. That's the nature of getting new information. So we have to have trust in the information and the knowledge that we are receiving. And the element of trust is extremely important.
There seems to be a great deal of political mistrust of academics. And there's a huge amount of intersection, it seems, right now between political talk and scientific talk, not always friendly conversation between the two. So how do we navigate that?
I myself and others that I work with, we believe and we practice that science is an integral part of society. It isn't that, science is over here and the rest of society is over there. There are some people who believe that, but but I don't. As I said, science is a way of looking at the world, and it's important to be informed, to be acquainted, to be making decisions on the basis of evidence that is presented, on evidence that has been validated. So I think the political decisions should be based on scientific knowledge and based on being responsible in whatever the politician, the local community leader says and does. I think that's a very important dimension that we always have to keep in mind and urge our elected officials, and even more importantly, urge ourselves to behave that way.
Does obviously the study of COVID-19 is going to largely be conducted by epidemiologists and virologists and biologists. Does chemistry play a role in learning more about this disease? And if so, what is that role? And if you can do that in a way that's understandable to people like me who haven't studied chemistry in 40 years.
Well, all of these changes that we're talking about involve chemical transformations, and understanding the behavior of these transformations at the molecular level is important. So yes, the chemical sciences are crucial. They're also crucial in the development of vaccines and medication and drugs that not only deal with COVID-19, but with all the ailments that we have. So yes, chemistry and chemists and chemical scientists play an important role in the technical aspects of the pandemic that we find ourselves in. But then humanists also play an important role in this because they help us understand better how to interact with each other and how to be responsible in being respectful, how to be confident, how to be trusting. So I see the importance of scientific progress to be high, but I also see the importance of the social sciences and humanities to be crucial so that we continue to enjoy the beautiful, complex world that we live in here safely.
Just to ask two very obvious questions, but I think maybe I don't know how to answer them and you do. What is a chemical and what is chemistry?
Everything around us is made of chemicals, everything. And chemicals can be in different forms. They can be small atoms. They can be a combination of atoms that make up molecules. They can be molecules that combine with each other. So everything around us is made of chemicals. The air that we breathe is a mixture of chemicals, usually good chemicals. The food that we eat is a mixture of chemicals. The clothes that we wear are made of chemicals. Our own bodies are made of chemicals. The medicine that we take is made of chemicals. Then the drugs that some people very foolishly experiment with are chemicals. And that's why we have to learn about chemicals, their safe handling, their proper disposal, and the benefits that we and others can accrue from chemicals. So chemistry is the study of making bonds between the atoms and breaking bonds. Chemical transformations about breaking bonds and making bonds. And so for a chemical reaction to occur, the chemicals have to come close to each other in an encounter, essentially, essentially touch each other, not necessarily, but close enough. And that is at the heart of mitigating the spread of disease. It's as simple as that, because if we don't come close to each other, then we reduce the likelihood of sharing the virus. So does that help with your question without going more into it?
Yes, that's good. How did you get into science as a kid, or did you as a kid? Did it come later? How did you get drawn to chemistry?
Oh boy, that's a long story, but I'll make it short.
Take your time.
When I was, excuse me for a second. When I was growing up in my native Lebanon, my mother knitted a sweater for me. It was a yellow sweater. And I asked her, what is yellow? She said, it's made of wool. I said, wool comes from sheep, and sheep are not yellow. I started asking questions, and my parents were always very supportive. I don't remember ever hearing from one of them saying, I don't know. And if they did say, I don't know, they said, let's try to find out together. So my curiosity was nurtured by my family environment. And I became more interested in color. Why are the cedars of Lebanon green? Why do the leaves change color in the fall? Why is it that when the wind blows on a body of water, in my case it was the Mediterranean Sea, we observe, we see what we call whitecaps? And is the color of the whitecaps in any way related to the color of the stuff that floats up in the sky? And so I started asking all kinds of questions, and I was also back then interested in how people interact with each other, but sticking with chemistry. So then we came to the United States, and I went to Boston University as an undergraduate, and had to decide what to major in. And I was interested in philosophy, in ethics, in politics, but I was also wanting to know the answers to some of these questions that I was learning how to ask. And I decided to major in chemistry so I could develop a better understanding of color. And in my chemistry courses and in other courses, I began to learn more about color, and also learn a little bit more about vision and about perception. And so I ended up majoring in chemistry, and then I went to graduate school at the University of Maryland, actually in between Boston University and the University of Maryland. I taught for 1 year as a teaching fellow at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. It was a small college back then, 800 men. Since it has become co-ed and it's bigger. So that was a good experience for me. And then after the University of Maryland, where I got my master's degree and PhD degree, I did postdoctoral work at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And then I was offered a position here at UW-Madison in the chemistry department. I accepted it, and I arrived in August of 1970, 1 week after the infamous bombing. So that's kind of a brief route describing, how I got to be here. My interest in science is to try to satisfy the curiosity that I have, try to use the knowledge that's acquired to help improve the quality of life on the planet, to be protective of the planet, and to be advancing the well-being of all the inhabitants of the planet.
I love the questions that you wondered about as a kid, because they are questions about the world that seem like obvious questions once somebody asks them, but often people don't think to ask them. I know that as I've spent my time here at the University of Wisconsin, in some of my work, I've really tried to focus on asking the obvious questions and finding people who can answer obvious questions. And I'm wondering if there are still obvious questions, either in science or in chemistry, obvious questions that still need to be answered, or even that still need to be asked.
Questions all over the place, Dan. But let's start with the natural curiosity that kids have. And let's start with younger kids. Kids of all ages are curious, but the younger ones express their curiosity a little more openly than adults. Actually, in my own experience, my own observations, the younger generation and people in retirement homes are less hesitant to ask questions. All kinds of questions. Why is the sky blue?
Why don't you answer that while we're on the subject? Why is the sky blue?
How does the microwave oven work?
Can you answer why the sky is blue, as long as you posed that question?
Yeah, I can answer lots of questions, but I don't want to rob anyone from the joy of making their own discoveries. So it has to do with the interaction of light with particles that are in the atmosphere. That's kind of the opening door to get into that. But by the way, Dan, you know, on my website, which is scifun.org, scifun.org, we have entries that deal with all kinds of questions that people ask. And actually, we also have experiments you can do at home safely. So I would encourage you and others to visit my website. It's www.scifun.org, or you can use any search engine and look for Science is Fun. And you'll find experiments. In fact, we do have an experiment, a home experiment, that helps address the question that I raised and that you wanted me to answer. But I'd rather have people become engaged in the process of making their own discoveries, validating their observations, doing the experiments with others at home and in school once we get to the stage where we can go back to school, because there's so much satisfaction that can be gained by doing the experiment. The important part is the process of fielding the question after you formulate the question. Now, as a youngster, you don't have to think about formulating a question. Just ask all kinds of questions, and don't get frustrated if you don't get an immediate answer, because we're not looking for instant gratification here. Instant gratification doesn't last very long, and so we need to be diving. We need to be swimming carefully in the ocean that we open up when we start asking these kinds of questions. And there's so many questions. Now, in science, there are very deep questions that physicists, astronomers, chemists, biologists, evolutionary biologists continue to ask. And the more we learn, the more we realize how little we learn, and that is actually, in part, a motivation to keep searching and to keep looking. And in this regard, I have a book that I read recently. It's not a recent book, but I read it recently. It's a book by the author Bill Bryson. It's called, let's see, what is it called? A Short History of Everything or something like that. Do you know this book, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think of it?
I love Bill Bryson.
Yeah. See, he's a very good writer, but he also has something to say. There are some writers that are good at wordsmithing and other things, but he has some. So I recommend that book highly for anyone who's interested in learning about the development and the progress of human thought, especially as it relates to science.
And I will post down here below a link to your website so people can engage with that on their own time. And you were talking about the curiosity of children. And I know that you have made outreach to the public and to kids a real highlight of your career as a chemist and as a professor here. So can you talk more about children's curiosity and the teaching of science and anything that comes to mind regarding those topics?
Yes, so thank you for asking that. And I'm a firm believer and a practitioner of sharing the joy of the discoveries that have been made in science and by scientists. I am a strong advocate of public engagement. Outreach is it's a good term, but I prefer public engagement because outreach might have a different sound to it. I'm reaching out to you. I may want to do it. I may not want to do it. Engagement means that we're both engaged in a conversation. We're both engaged in a set of activities. And so until recently, you know, we used to take the Science is Fun truck to a variety of locations, get chemicals and equipment out, whether it's a farmer's market or a school or a community center. And people would gather around, and I and others in my group would do some experiments, but the other people who come to the exploration station that we set up will also do some experiments and engage in a back and forth activity, having a conversation about what it is that you see, what it is that you are participating in. All kinds of different experiments can be done. And some of these, by the way, as I said already, they are on the website, scifun.org, scifun.org. Thank you for putting it down in the lower third of the screen. But, you know, people can say it a few times quietly and remember it. This is how we're learning by repeating a little bit. So it's scifun.org, scifun.org. But what good is it to remember something if you don't use it? So I invite everyone to come and visit the website and check out the home experience, learn about.
Sorry, Bassam, do you have a phone or something? It's terrible. There we go. We have a strange sound happening. Okay, it seems to be calming down. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So the in-person interactions are very important. Nowadays, we are working on a couple of projects to see how we can interact via the internet with people at home, with kids of all ages. And so we are, my group and I are working on short vignettes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes video showing what the experiment is, a little bit of how to set it up. We want people to explore, want people to do things. And we want people to do meaningful things. And so this is work in progress. We're trying to adapt to the situation that we are in. And then I would like to share with you and others a brief summary of how I'm approaching all of this not only because of COVID-19, but I find it useful. It's actually three words, and they all begin with the letter A. The first one is adjust. The second one is adapt. The third one is accept. It's really a triad between those three words. And in communication, the words have to mean the same thing to everyone that's engaged in the conversation. Just to give a simple example, when we used to get on the airplane, we adjust the seatbelt. We adapt to the environment that we're in. We're sitting inside a big metallic tube. We accept that we can't leave until the plane lands. But there's so that's a very simple and simplistic example of what I'm talking about here. So I find this concept to be somewhat useful, and maybe you and others want to comment about it. And you may get back to me electronically. If you go to the website, at the bottom of the home page, there's an email address, and you can communicate back with me, and I'm happy to respond to you, engage in an electronic conversation. I'd much rather have it in person, but we have to adapt to the circumstances that we're in.
When we were talking about the coronavirus, and you were talking about how, yes, there's chemistry involved in addition to biology, and you were painting a picture of a real interweaving of the sciences, looking at topics from the same topic from different angles. But I've heard a lot of talk that the sciences are somewhat separate from each other. They're very specialized. Silos is the word that people use. That the chemists are in a silo, and the microbiologists are in a silo, and the physicists are in a silo. Do you feel that that's old news? Has that changed? Is that a problem? Is there a way that scientists need to speak with each other more? And is it difficult given that there are different scientific languages in different disciplines? That's a lot of questions thrown into a basket.
I'm a strong advocate and practitioner of wanting to achieve science literacy among the general public and among scientists. I'm not a reductionist, Dan, but let me say this. Society is in two sectors. There's the science-rich sector and the science-poor sector. Who's in the science-rich sector? Colleges and universities, parts of industry, the national laboratories. Who's in the science-poor sector? Everyone else. And the gap between those two sectors continues to widen at a very alarming rate. And that's why we should be methodical, thoughtful in wanting to close that gap as much as possible. Now, who is responsible for doing that? The scientists. So the scientists talk with each other in specialized publications, journals, at conventions, at conferences. But scientists must develop the skills of sharing the joy and the meaning of scientific accomplishments with the non-science audience. That is a tall order. Now, science literacy does not mean a deep understanding of chemistry, physics, biology. It means developing an appreciation of what science is, what science can do for us, and what science cannot do for us. Science is not the answer to all the human questions that we have. But achieving science literacy is important because it enables us as individuals and groups and communities to avoid being bamboozled into making foolish decisions when matters related to science and technology are in play. And that is really evident nowadays, especially in misinformation and lack of guidance, lack of leadership in society as we try to deal with a very serious, highly consequential, unprecedented public health issue. So the interaction that scientists have with each other works well. The interaction between the scientists and the general public must be improved. And this is a tall order. And there are people who are very good at it, but not enough of them. And that's one of the more important activities and thrusts that I and others continue to do. It is the core part of science is fun. So you know, Dan, when I say science is fun, I mean fun in the best sense of the word. We're not talking about cheap thrills. I'm not talking about cheap thrills. I'm talking about being intellectually stimulated, being emotionally rewarded, engaging in meaningful conversations about different transformations, as I've said already, in the beautiful, complex world that we live in. So, in order to excel, one has to be sharply focused. And when you're sharply focused, then you develop subspecialties. And these subspecialties are even big silos, to use your word, that even among scientists, the level of science literacy is in need of improvement. Because we live in an age of subspecialization, we need to put what we do in context. Not to lose the sharp focus that we have on the very important research that is being done, but it has to be done well, it has to be shared well, it has to be validated, peer-reviewed, has to be published, but we also, as scientists, we have a responsibility to share science with everyone, not only other specialists, but with the general public.
Let's say somebody is watching this video. This is a 27-year-old in the early stage of a career, college graduate, maybe someone with a master's degree in business. And this person is watching you and saying, this all sounds good. I'm not sure I have science literacy. I don't even really know what that is, but it sounds like something I want. So what is it and how do I get it?
Science literacy is an attitude. It develops with being engaged and deeply involved in various aspects of knowledge, in this case, scientific knowledge. So, as I say, it's an attitude. It's like personal hygiene. It doesn't develop overnight. And that's why whatever age one is at, it's never too late to begin to listen and to read and to engage in conversations about scientific progress, scientific discoveries. For example, how do we know that the Earth is a sphere? What's the date today, Dan? Today is the 16th of June. In just a few days, we will have a major celestial event. What is it?
It's, is it the equinox?
Yes. Why do we have 4 seasons? All kinds of questions that can one think about and try to seek good ways to field those questions and hopefully come up with answers. These questions have been asked before, and our ancestors provide us with a rich heritage. So we should learn about that, and that's why inculcating school and university, college, and even graduate education in arenas of science literacy is really crucial. So it's a long-term activity, but it's never too late. If you're 27 years old, you have a business degree, your business depends on scientific progress, depends on technological advances. Science and technology are the engines that drive our economy. And that's why we have to learn about not the detailed, intricate details, but we have to learn about the interaction of science and technology with society. And in my experience, in the past 50 years as a faculty member at UW-Madison, I find people of all ages not only hungry and thirsty for learning more, but I found them inviting and wanting to engage in conversations to learn more. And this is where the scientists can come into the picture and not only talk about their own intricate details of their own scientific research, but talk about science and the nature of science and engage in ways by which we can learn from each other so that we can understand, as I say, and I love to say, the beautiful, complex world that we live in.
Is there a way in which our elementary schools and high schools could teach science better?
There are lots of ways. The teacher plays a critical role, and the parents are important. So parental involvement in the process is important. What is talked about at dinner? Dinner conversations are important. Helping the youngster at home, and hopefully soon enough, I don't know how soon that's going to be, in school, nurture that curiosity, nourish the inquisitiveness of people. I think that's very, very important. And it's
This is what
very okay to say, I don't know.
Bassam, we lost a lot of your last paragraph or so because Zoom folded time up and it folded what you said onto the inside. So the parents' involvement, and just recap what you said in the last 30 seconds.
Parental involvement is crucial in the development and growth of kids. It's also crucial to the development and growth of the parents themselves. And that's why having dinner conversations about whatever the youngster is wanting to talk about what they're curious about, is not only science, Dan, it's music, it's literature, imagination, all of this really, really is crucial to being a person growing, becoming healthy, developing an attitude that is open-minded, that is respectful of other people's, not respectful of other people, not necessarily their views, but respectful of fellow human beings. I think all of this happens because of a combination of parents and teachers and families working together to make us all grow and develop and become responsible citizens in our community.
And when you dream of a society in which that happens, in which everybody's curiosity is nurtured, everybody has the wherewithal to ask questions, everyone has the family structure to get those questions answered, schools nurture curiosity, how would our society look? How would it be different if all that were to come to pass?
Well, it's not just a dream. I mean, it's dreaming is good. It's what we must do. We're on the planet for a limited period of time. We should live life to the fullest. We should be engaging in variety
Once again, time is folding. And we'll have to ask Bassam what he said in a minute when the picture unfreezes. These kinds of conversations are really par for the course in the Zoom era. We just have to hope that this still image gets released and we can follow up.
Activities, recreational activities.
Okay, we seem to have you back. We lost almost all of that answer due to time folding. Can you just recap? I'm very sorry.
Let's see, we're dealing with a question that you asked about.
It's not just a dream, you were saying. It's just a necessity.
Yeah, that's not just a dream. Dreaming is important, but realizing the dreams is more important. And working hard to move in the direction of realizing what the dream is about and what it's for. I think that's good. And doing recreational activities, doing listening to music, reading books, doing all kinds of activities, learning more about the society that we live in. You know, Dan, every year between May 24th and July 4th, I read 3 documents. They're in this book called American Trilogy. Actually, they're in all kinds of locations. This is a publication from UW-Madison, was put about 20 years ago or so, but I've been using it extensively. It has in it the Declaration of Independence. It has in it the U.S. Constitution, and it also has the Bill of Rights. Of course, the Bill of Rights is part of the Constitution, but it's culled out. The reason I read it between May 24th and July 4th is that July 4th is Independence Day, and May 24th is when I was sworn in as a U.S. citizen here in Madison. Words have meaning, Dan. What the U.S. Constitution says and the meaning of what it says and how we use that meaning is crucial. Now, I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I just said. I am not an originalist in this regard, but I am a person who believes and practices the importance of the significant words that are in these 3 documents. And you don't have to find them in this booklet. You can just find them anyplace very easily on the internet. The U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and then the Bill of Rights. It's very, very important that we remind ourselves what the 4th of July in America is all about. It's Independence Day. You know, there's a 4th of July in every country, but we celebrate independence and the meaning and the values of being an American are crucial for everyone to appreciate, not only those who are naturalized as I am, but every native born American also should have a look frequently at those documents.
Words matter. Thanks so much for speaking with me.
Thank you, Dan.